Good evening, Valeriy Viktorovich.
Good evening.
Good evening, dear viewers, listeners, and guests in the studio. Today is October 7th, 2019. Naturally, everybody is interested in your commentary on the signing or negotiation of the so-called Steinmeier formula. Immediately, Ukrainian nationalists took it to the streets. What is it? Another circus? Or is this a real intent of the West to make Ukraine follow a new agreement?
No, the West has no intent to make Ukraine follow a new agreement. Remember, Steinmeier formula is some variation of implementation of the Minsk Accords, which were validated by the UN Security Council. That means that the UN fully adopted the Minsk agreements as a legitimate diplomatic document that should allow to resolve the conflict in Ukraine. One has to understand why the West, on the one hand, expressed support to Minsk agreements, and on the other hand, Ukraine, with its Western masters, didn't do anything to fulfill them. The essence of Minsk agreements is not some temporary ceasefire in this civil war. The essence of Minsk agreements is the complete cancellation of the state coup in Ukraine. There is no other option. The Minsk agreements work like a virus. Regardless of the actions of Kiev's gang, whether they would comply with the agreements or not, the existence of the Minsk agreements is a death sentence to the state coup. It is a death sentence to banderism and Svidomism in Ukraine. There will be one strategy of the state coup aftermath liquidation if Kiev's gang do start complying with the Minsk agreements. There will be another strategy of aftermath liquidation if Kiev's gang don't follow the agreements. But in both cases, the state coup in Ukraine will be eliminated. Banderism will be destroyed. What is the bottom line of Minsk agreements execution by Kiev? As soon as Kiev begins to execute these agreements, it faces the task of the extermination of all outlaw Bandera followers in Ukraine. We said many times that all death squads such as Donbas, Tornado, Azov, and others, all these attack dogs brought up to kill people, are sentenced to be exterminated in any scenario. I have to say that Zelensky has a unique situation when he can go down in history, like Romanian King Mikhail I, when the latter arrested Antonescu, and as a result, Romania made a U-turn from being a Germany's ally to become a member of the anti-Hitler coalition. Mikhail I was decorated with the Victory Order by Stalin. Even though Romania as a state is quasi-state, it is an absolutely engineered state, but the political effect of that decision was huge, and it allowed Mikhail to have the brightest future out of all possible scenarios. What situation has Zelensky found himself in? To execute the Minsk agreements, Zelensky has a good option to request assistance from Lugansk and Donetsk republics. Donetsk and Lugansk have enough power to restore a statehood within all Ukrainian territory. I repeat, Lugansk and Donetsk republics are the only rightful successors of the Ukrainian statehood. Kyiv's gang has no sovereignty over the Ukrainian statehood. They conduct the United States statehood within the territory of Ukraine. That is why Trump so easily dumped Zelensky by leaking the transcript of their telephone conversation. So, in essence, the best way for Zelensky to implement the Minsk agreements is to issue an order to Ukrainian military not to resist Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republic Army. Moreover, enter into subordination to it, and then that united military force will liquidate the death squads, battalions. This option sounds fantastic. Would or wouldn't happen. But in principle, it is a very legitimate scenario. Here is another scenario, which is inevitable if Kyiv's gang, Kyiv's regime currently in power established since the state coup in 2014, start execution of the Minsk agreements themselves. Then the Ukrainian statehood power will have to exterminate outlaw Bandera followers, all these death squads. Simultaneously, at night, armed crooks of Ukraine and other more or less normal units of the Ministry of Internal Affairs would surround the deployment sites of all death squads like Azov Regiment and execute all chastisers by shooting on extrajudicial basis. Simultaneous and full termination. By doing that, armed crooks of Ukraine do have an opportunity to legalize themselves to the armed forces of Ukraine. Azov Regiment is part of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. That means Avakov will have to make a decision on what side he wants to be on. One would say it is too far stretched. On June 30th, 1934, the Night of the Long Knives took place, where one non-state organization, IESS, with the help of the German state, by Hitler's order, terminated another non-state organization, SA, including its leader, Rome, and thus power monopoly was established. So, I don't say anything extraordinary. If Kyiv's regime wants to prolong itself into the future, it has no other option as to use Hitler's proven record and massacre those who accomplished the 2014 state coup. All these scums of the earth, Bandera followers, united in death squads. Kyiv's regime must exterminate them extrajudicially, completely and at once. Nothing else will work under given circumstances. It would be a good outcome for us. We wouldn't have to do it ourselves and bring order. I repeat, the Kyiv's regime will crash anyway, but it would let them prolong themselves for some time during a country-to-country dialogue with Lugansk and Donetsk republics. It would allow them, who rob all Ukraine, to enrich themselves, to run away from Ukraine in a more or less legitimate fashion, to avoid being in a wanted list worldwide. In order for the corrupt elite to do that, for example, Kolomoisky created a death squad, Donbas, To have an opportunity to live in the West with stolen money when Ukrainian statehood will be restored on the Minsk Agreement's basis and established on the basis of Lugansk and Donetsk republics' statehood, and same Kolomoisky would have a chance to live in the West reasonably well and won't have to hide out in some holes. He must destroy all death squads, shoot them out, slaughter them out, exterminate all those chastisers that he created by the hands of his other chastisers. It is logic. I repeat, there is a historic example. This example can be studied and decided how it correlates to the political reality in Ukraine. They have no other option. If Kiev does this dirty work itself, terminate everyone whom they brought up to kill Russians, it will be for the better. Lugansk and Donetsk army won't have to catch all these Bandera followers in their hideouts. That is why I said extrajudicially, under the dark, and at once, all of them have to be killed. If Kiev's gang wants to prolong itself by complying with the Minsk agreements, and they are looking for a dialogue with Lugansk and Donetsk, then Kiev has no other choice except to terminate all chastisers completely and at once. If Kiev doesn't do it, then Kiev's regime will crash by a different scenario. The Minsk agreements include some options for this second scenario, but it is yet too early to announce them, unfortunately. Here is the deal. When Strelkov was leaving Slavyansk, I was saying there is one element that shouldn't be announced yet. But today we can say about it. This element is the direct help of the Ukrainian General Staff. Why shouldn't this information have been announced at the time? Let me put it this way. When Strelkov left Slavyansk for Donetsk, 2 military trains arrived in Donetsk, at least 2 that I personally can attest to. One from Lvov Armor Vehicle Factory and second from Kharkov, both loaded with tanks. Thus, Ukrainian factories were supplying tanks to anti-Kiev militia. Had we announced this information about the actions of certain fractions in the Ukrainian General Staff, those military trains with tanks would have never existed. The same situation with the Minsk agreements now. There is a very interesting episode in it, and let it come to fruition unannounced. Why did I announce the scenario of the complete extermination of outlaw Banderites? Because it doesn't change anything. It is just one of the possible scenarios. It would be preferable that this dirty task of Bandera followers' extermination, who were brought up to kill Russians, would be done by Bandera followers themselves. Let sinners to kill other sinners. But on the other hand, this scenario has its pitfalls. And this is not a good time to announce these pitfalls yet. From that perspective, all resistance towards the Minsk agreements from Russian patriots and libertards shows they have no clue how the Minsk agreements work, how the Minsk agreements can be used to conduct not only foreign policy, but global politics, and to restore the statehood on Ukraine's territory. And this is not about Donbas becoming a part of the remaining Ukraine. It is about the statehood of Ukraine within the whole Ukrainian territory being identical to the statehood of Lugansk and Donetsk republics. That means no Bandera following, no Svidomism. All Banderite nurseries will be destroyed, and Ukraine will be peaceful. I repeat, If any part of Ukraine remains separate and not under Donbas control, that part will become a Banderite nursery. And Bandera followers won't let live peacefully not only to Ukraine, but Russia too. That is why there is only one point on the agenda: the purge, the full purge of outlaw Bandera followers. And if it is done by Avakov, then good. That means he will get a lesser sentence at the upcoming tribunal.